The town of Maple Hollow sat between long fields of gold and the edge of a quiet forest. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and life moved slowly, almost too slowly for a curious child like Lily Parker. She was 8 years old, small for her age, with messy brown hair and wide green eyes that seemed to hold a light of their own. While other kids spent their afternoons watching cartoons or playing outside, Lily sat by her bedroom window with a box of crayons and sheets of paper spread around her. She wasn't drawing flowers or animals. She was drawing things that no one else had ever seen. Her parents, Rebecca and Daniel, thought she just had a big imagination. Rebecca worked part-time at the town's diner, while Daniel was a high school science teacher who loved astronomy. They were good parents, gentle and loving, though they sometimes worried about how much time Lily spent alone. But Lily wasn't lonely. She had friends. At least that's what she told them. She called them her imaginary friends. There were 3 of them, and each had a name that sounded strange but beautiful when she said it. Zareth, the one with wings made of light, Orin, who looked like a long, glowing serpent with eyes that changed color, and Kale, tall and quiet, his body covered in a shell of black stone. Lily said they came to her at night when the stars were out. They told her stories about other worlds, about oceans that sang and mountains that could move. Rebecca smiled when Lily talked about them, but Daniel sometimes frowned, wondering where she heard such things. The first time Lily mentioned Zareth, she was sitting at the kitchen table, eating a peanut butter sandwich. He says his wings used to shine brighter than stars, she said between bites. But now they're broken. Rebecca looked up from the sink, her hands still wet. Who's Zareth, sweetie? My friend, Lily said simply. He lives in the sky, but he visits when I dream. Daniel chuckled. That's quite the story. Maybe Zareth can help me with my science class sometime. Lily laughed, but her eyes stayed serious. He says he used to teach too. A long time ago, before his world disappeared. Daniel and Rebecca shared a look. It wasn't the first time Lily had said something like that. She had been talking about her friends for almost a year now. The drawings on her walls were covered in creatures that looked nothing like animals from Earth. Some had crystal eyes, some had wings made of fire, and others floated like jellyfish in the air. Daniel sometimes studied them after she went to bed. The detail in them was far beyond what an 8-year-old should be able to draw. The patterns around their heads, the way the stars aligned in the background, it was almost like she was copying something real. One night, Daniel decided to ask her more. He found her sitting by the window again, drawing with her flashlight on. Lily, he said softly, where do you get these ideas? The pictures, the names, all this? Lily didn't look up. They show me, she said. Zareth says I'm the only one who can see them now. Everyone else stopped listening. Daniel smiled gently. You mean like people used to see them before? Lily nodded. A long time ago, before people forgot. He didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to laugh, but something about the way she spoke made him pause. It wasn't the voice of a child pretending. It was calm, serious, and certain. She believed what she was saying. Rebecca started to worry when Lily began writing strange symbols in her notebooks. They looked like stars and lines connected by tiny dots. When Daniel ran them through his old astronomy software, he was shocked to find they matched real star patterns, some known, others unrecorded. The coordinates pointed to empty regions of space, places no telescope had ever explored in detail. One evening, Rebecca was folding laundry when she heard Lily talking softly in her room. At first, she thought Lily was reading out loud, but the voice was different, lower, almost musical. She stopped in the hallway, heart racing, and pressed her ear against the door. Lily's voice was answering another voice, one that seemed to echo even though the door was closed. The words didn't sound like any language Rebecca had ever heard. When Rebecca finally opened the door, Lily was alone, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her crayons scattered around. Who were you talking to? Rebecca asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Zareth, Lily said. He was telling me about the war, about how everything burned. Rebecca's heart sank. What war? The one that ended everything, Lily said softly. He said it was their fault and now there's nothing left. Only the voices. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She told Daniel what she heard, but he thought it was just another dream game. Yet as the days passed, small things began to change. The baby monitor they still kept in Lily's room sometimes picked up faint whispers when she slept. Static, then soft voices. Once Daniel recorded them. When he played them back, he heard a rhythm, like someone speaking in patterns too complex to be random. He deleted the file the next morning, telling himself it was interference. But when he looked at Lily at breakfast, quietly eating cereal and drawing something new, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was listening to something they couldn't hear. Outside, the autumn wind carried the sound of dry leaves across the fields. The world felt normal, peaceful, but in the Parker house something unseen had already begun to stir. The weeks after the strange whispers began were uneasy for the Parker family. Maple Hollow looked the same. Quiet streets, the smell of rain on the fields, and the slow rhythm of small-town life. But inside the Parker home the air felt heavier. Rebecca tried to ignore it. She kept busy with chores, baking, and pretending everything was normal. Daniel buried himself in his work at the high school, teaching physics and pretending not to notice the way Lily's drawings were becoming more deliberate. Lily had started using shapes and symbols that Daniel recognized as mathematical. Circles and triangles, lines forming patterns that looked like orbital paths. When he asked where she learned them, she just smiled and said, "Oren showed me." Oren, according to Lily, was her newest friend, a serpent made of light who lived in what she called the forever waters. Daniel asked if Oren was like Zareth or Kale, but Lily shook her head. "He doesn't have wings," she said. "He swims through the stars." Daniel tried to laugh it off, but later that night, after grading papers, he looked again at her drawings. The patterns matched the orbits of binary stars, two suns locked together in endless motion. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to unsettle him. That weekend, Daniel decided to test a theory. He took one of Lily's notebooks and ran the symbols through an online translation program used by astrophysicists. The program compared known celestial maps, searching for a match. What came back wasn't nonsense. It was a rough outline of a star cluster in a region astronomers had once labeled uninhabitable. When he looked closer, the coordinates pointed to something known among a few researchers as the Silent Expanse, a stretch of space where several deep space probes had gone dark over the last century. He tried to tell himself it was coincidence, that Lily had just drawn random dots and lines, but the precision was too exact. Even the scale was proportionate. That night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "Rebecca," he whispered. "What if she's not just imagining this?" Rebecca sighed, turning on her side. "Danny, she's 8. Kids imagine all kinds of things. You used to pretend you were an astronaut." He nodded, though his heart wasn't convinced. "Yeah, but I didn't write alien star maps." The next morning, Rebecca found Lily in the backyard, sitting cross-legged on the grass with her crayon spread around her. She was humming softly, a slow, strange tune that sounded almost like a lullaby. On the ground in front of her, she had drawn 3 large figures in colored chalk. Zareth, Oren, and Kale. Their eyes were bright blue circles and their bodies were surrounded by symbols. "What are you drawing, honey?" Rebecca asked, kneeling down beside her. Lily didn't look up. "A memory," she said. "A memory of what?" "They said they don't want to be forgotten again." Rebecca froze. "What do you mean again?" Lily shrugged as if it were obvious. "They were alive before we were. Before people. They said their worlds are gone, but their voices stayed. They found me because I listened." Rebecca smiled nervously. "That's nice, sweetheart, but maybe it's time to draw something else, okay? Like a cat or a rainbow." Lily looked up at her, her green eyes clear and calm. "They don't like rainbows," she said softly. "They said the colors hurt now." That night, Rebecca cried quietly while Daniel sat beside her. She didn't want to admit it, but there was something about the way Lily spoke, so serious, so certain, that felt wrong. It wasn't a child's play anymore. It was something deeper. A few days later, Daniel took Lily's drawings to a colleague at the nearby university, Dr. Aaron Blake. Blake specialized in astrophysics and had a reputation for curiosity. When Daniel showed him the notebook, Blake's eyebrows furrowed. "These are orbital calculations," he said. "Not perfect, but whoever did this understands gravitational balance." "You're saying your daughter drew these?" Daniel nodded. "She says her friends taught her." Blake leaned back in his chair. "Friends?" Daniel hesitated. "Imaginary ones." Blake chuckled. "Then your kids' imaginary friends are better at astrophysics than most grad students." He turned one page and stopped. "Hold on, this symbol, this one here. It matches a probe transmission we picked up years ago. The one that vanished." Daniel blinked. "You mean one of the deep space probes?" Yeah, we lost contact in the silent expanse. No signals, no data. But just before it disappeared, it sent back a burst, a sequence of symbols like this. No one could decode them. Daniel stared at the notebook. What if she's hearing them? Blake raised an eyebrow. Hearing who? The ones who were there, Daniel said quietly. The ones that came before us. Blake laughed softly. You're starting to sound like a sci-fi movie. But later that night, Blake emailed Daniel a single line. I ran the pattern through our system. It's not random. It's a signal. Back at home, Lily sat at her window again, her small hand tracing stars on the glass. She spoke softly as if to someone unseen. They're listening now, she said, but they don't understand yet. They think they're finding us, but we found them first. Her voice was calm, but her eyes glowed faintly in the dark reflection of the window. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees. The baby monitor on Rebecca's nightstand crackled to life again. A whisper, faint but clear, drifted through the static, a wordless song layered and ancient. In that moment, the Parker family's quiet life in Maple Hollow began to unravel. The past wasn't just whispering anymore. It was waking up. It began with the cold. The temperature in Lily's room dropped every night around midnight, no matter how high the heater was turned up. Rebecca blamed the old insulation, while Daniel thought maybe the vents were blocked. But when he stepped into Lily's room one night, the air felt wrong. It wasn't just cold, it was still, like the air had stopped moving altogether. Even the curtains hung frozen in place. Lily was asleep, her breathing calm and even, but her fingers were twitching slightly, as if she were writing invisible words in her dreams. Daniel turned on the baby monitor recorder again. It was a habit now, something that helped him feel like he was doing something. But what he heard that night was different. It wasn't just static or faint murmurs. It was a voice. Not one voice. Many. The sound was layered, like a chorus of whispers speaking in perfect rhythm. The language was alien, impossible to understand, but the tone was unmistakably mournful. When Daniel slowed the playback speed, he heard something that made his heart stop. The voices repeated one phrase over and over between the layers of static. Remember us. He listened again. The same words, clearer now. Remember us. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the kitchen, his laptop open, the recording replaying again and again. When Rebecca found him in the morning, he was pale and shaking. What happened? She asked. He looked up at her. They spoke. Who? The voices, he swallowed hard. And they know her name. That day, he sent the recording to Dr. Blake, who promised to run it through spectral analysis. Hours later, Blake called him, his voice tight with confusion. Danny, I don't know what to say. This isn't audio distortion. The frequency patterns, they match structured communication. Daniel's throat went dry. Meaning? Meaning, Blake said. Someone or something was trying to talk back. Meanwhile, Lily grew quieter during the days and more active at night. She began drawing less and writing more, lines of symbols and flowing text that neither parent could read. Rebecca found pages of it under her pillow, filled with strange circular marks that looked like orbit lines, mixed with short bursts of English words. One of them said, "They are trying to find home." When Daniel asked her what it meant, she said softly, "They can't find where they came from anymore. The stars are gone." The next few nights blurred together. Lights flickered in the hallway. The TV turned on by itself. And Lily began waking up at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night, sitting at her desk and staring out the window. She said she was waiting for Zareth. Rebecca tried staying up with her once. At first, nothing happened. The clock ticked quietly, the only sound in the room. Then, just as the minute hand moved past 3:15, the air shimmered. A faint glow filled the room, not from the moon or the streetlight outside, but from the walls themselves. The chalk drawings Lily had made days before began to pulse with light. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. Lily whispered, "He's here." And then Rebecca saw it. A shadow, tall, almost human, standing near the window. Its form flickered like a projection made of fog and light. Wings extended from its back, thin and translucent. Eyes that glowed faintly blue turned toward Rebecca. For a moment she couldn't move. The shape didn't threaten her, but its presence carried a weight, a sorrow that pressed against her chest. Zareth. She blinked, and the figure was gone. The glow faded, the room darkened, and Lily slumped over asleep again. Rebecca stood frozen, unable to breathe, until Daniel burst into the room. She could barely speak. "He was here," she whispered. "I saw him." Daniel searched the room, found nothing. But when he checked the baby monitor footage the next morning, there was a frame, just one frame, where something tall and winged stood beside Lily's bed. Blake arrived at their house the following weekend with equipment: infrared scanners, electromagnetic sensors, and a portable spectrum analyzer. He didn't laugh at Daniel's story this time. He just listened carefully and set up his devices around Lily's room. At exactly 3:15 a.m., the equipment came alive. The EMF spiked, and the infrared camera picked up faint patterns of movement. When Blake enhanced the image, he saw three forms, one winged, one long and serpentine, and one massive, standing like stone. Blake muttered, "Jesus, that's not possible." The forms faded after 30 seconds, leaving behind nothing but silence. But when he played back the audio, the words returned. "Remember us." Blake turned to Daniel and Rebecca, his face pale. "These signals, they're not from Earth. They're repeating cosmic frequencies, like the kind we detect from pulsars, but encoded." Lily, still half asleep, whispered from her bed, "They're not gone. They're echoes. They live in the stars." The adults froze. Daniel kneeled beside her. "What do they want, sweetheart?" Lily opened her eyes, and for the first time they glowed faintly blue. "They want to be remembered," she said softly. "They don't want to disappear again." The glow around her faded as she drifted back to sleep. Blake stood motionless, staring at his readings. The patterns were beautiful, complex, harmonic, impossible to fabricate. That night, as the three adults sat in silence, Daniel finally said what none of them wanted to admit. "They're not imaginary." Outside, a soft hum filled the night sky, low, deep, and rhythmic. The kind of sound that felt alive. And for the first time in centuries, the voices of a dead civilization had found a way to speak again. The world outside Maple Hollow went on as usual. But inside the Parker house, the air felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. The whispers had stopped for a few days, and Lily seemed almost normal again. She laughed at cartoons, helped Rebecca bake cookies, and even played in the backyard. But Daniel and Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a calm between waves. Dr. Blake had taken the recordings, the symbols, and the camera data back to his lab at the university. He promised to stay in touch, but Daniel noticed he sounded different, quieter, like a man trying to convince himself of something he didn't believe. One night, Rebecca found Lily sitting by the window again, her little hands folded neatly in her lap. The stars outside were bright, scattered across the velvet black sky. Lily spoke without turning her head. "They're coming back tonight." Rebecca's voice trembled. "Who is, sweetheart?" "The others," Lily whispered. "The ones who watched their worlds die." Rebecca stepped closer. "Zareth?" Lily shook her head. "No, not just him. All of them." That same evening, Daniel got a call from Dr. Blake. His voice was shaking. "Danny, you need to listen to this." The data from the audio recording, it's repeating patterns of pulsar frequencies, but they're layered in threes. It's like a message, and it's not coming from inside the atmosphere. "What are you saying?" Blake took a breath. "I'm saying your daughter's imaginary friends might be broadcasting across light years." Before Daniel could answer, Lily screamed. He dropped the phone and ran upstairs, Rebecca right behind him. Lily was standing on her bed, pointing at the wall. The room was glowing faintly again, like moonlight filtered through water. But this time there were shadows moving across the walls, shapes that twisted and folded like living smoke. "They're showing me!" Lily cried. "They're showing me what happened." The light brightened until it hurt to look at. Then, just as quickly, it vanished. The room was dark again, except for Lily's glowing eyes. Rebecca rushed to her, pulling her close. "It's okay, baby. It's over. You're safe." But Lily shook her head slowly. No one was safe. Not them. She fell asleep almost instantly in Rebecca's arms. Daniel sat beside them, heart pounding. When he turned on the recorder again, he heard faint voices in the background. Not whispers this time, but songs. Melancholy, rhythmic, full of loss. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, reading through Lily's notebooks. The drawings were becoming more complex, filled with scenes of cities built on oceans, towers of glass and light and winged beings hovering above. One page showed a massive explosion tearing through the sky. At the bottom, in Lily's small, careful handwriting, was a single line. They made the stars angry. The next day, Blake drove back to Maple Hollow. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from sleepless nights. "You need to see this," he said, setting his laptop on the table. On the screen was an image, a map of deep space glowing with faint radio signals. "These frequencies," he said, pointing at the waves, "they match Lily's drawings. The patterns align perfectly with her coordinates." Rebecca frowned. "What does that mean?" Blake leaned forward. "It means those extinct civilizations she talks about, they might have really existed. And whatever happened to them, it left an echo strong enough to reach Earth," Daniel whispered. "Echoes of the dead." Blake nodded. "Yes, but there's more." He clicked another file. It was a reconstructed image from the combined data of Lily's recordings and astronomical readings. The screen showed 3 shapes, each massive, each orbiting a dead star. The energy readings pulsed like heartbeats. Rebecca covered her mouth. "What are those?" Blake's voice was barely a whisper. "Graves." That night Lily woke again, but this time she wasn't afraid. She told her parents that her friends wanted to tell their story. Daniel began writing down every word. Zareth's world had been filled with light and knowledge, a place of peace and song. But when a cosmic storm swept through their system, it tore apart their sun. Orin's people lived in the oceans of a gas giant, feeding on the light of its moons until those moons were shattered by war. Kale's kind were guardians, protectors of all, but they failed to stop the destruction that consumed them all. "They fought to save each other," Lily said softly, "but the stars burned too hot. Their worlds turned to dust." Rebecca held her daughter tightly, tears in her eyes. "Why are they telling you this?" "Because they don't want to be forgotten," Lily said. "They said humans are like them. We look at the stars and dream. They want us to remember what dreaming costs." The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The power flickered, then went out completely. The only light came from the faint glow in Lily's eyes. Daniel lit a candle, its flame small but steady. Blake, who had stayed the night, watched the shadows dance on the wall. For a brief moment he saw movement, a shimmer like something passing between worlds. He turned to Daniel. "You realize what this means?" Daniel nodded slowly. "They're not gone." "Not completely. They live through her." Lily looked up, her voice soft but clear. "Not just through me, through all of you. If you listen." The candle flickered once more, then steadied. Outside, the stars shone brighter than they ever had before, as if someone, somewhere, had finally been heard. And in the silence that followed, the forgotten races of the universe began to dream again. The story of the Parker family had spread quietly among scientific circles. Dr. Blake had shared the data only with a few trusted colleagues. But word of a child drawing star maps from uncharted regions was too strange to stay secret for long. Within weeks, whispers reached the National Observatory in Nevada, where researchers were scanning the skies for anomalies. One night they found one. It was faint, almost lost in cosmic noise, but the signal pattern matched the frequencies found in Lily's recordings. The data wasn't just similar, it was identical. Dr. Blake stood in the control room of the observatory as monitors displayed waveforms pulsing in perfect rhythm. The air was electric with disbelief. "That's it," Blake whispered. "It's them." The lead researcher, Dr. Patel, frowned. "You're saying this came from your 8-year-old's notebook?" Blake nodded slowly. "From her friends." Patel looked skeptical but curious. "We've triangulated the source. It's not random background noise. It's coming from somewhere in the silent expanse, Sector 19B. Blake's pulse quickened. That was the same coordinate Lily had drawn weeks ago. Back in Maple Hollow, Daniel was pacing the kitchen while Rebecca sat at the table with Lily. The child had been quiet lately, too quiet. She no longer talked about her friends out loud, but she often stared into space, eyes unfocused, like she was listening to something only she could hear. When Blake arrived later that night, his face was pale but determined. "They found the signal," he said without preamble. "It's broadcasting again. The same pattern." Daniel's heart pounded. "You're sure?" "Positive. It's faint, but it's active. We're heading to Nevada. There's a facility in the desert where we can isolate it and see if it's transmitting anything else." Rebecca glanced at Lily. You want to bring her? Yes, Blake said. If she's somehow connected, she might help us understand what we're hearing. Rebecca hesitated, but Lily spoke before she could object. They want me to come, she said softly. They said they're waiting. The desert stretched endlessly under a burning sun. The observatory compound was a cluster of white domes surrounded by flat, cracked earth. At night, the sky came alive with stars, so bright they looked close enough to touch. Inside the main dome, computers hummed and screens flickered with streams of data. Lily sat quietly beside her parents while Dr. Blake and his team worked. Every few minutes, the monitors would flare with a spike in signal strength, like a heartbeat echoing across space. Patel watched the data scroll by. We're getting layered transmissions. It's not just one signal, it's thousands of overlapping waves. Each one slightly different, like voices. Blake turned to Lily. Lily, do you hear them now? She nodded slowly. They're scared. Why? They think they're fading. Every time someone forgets, they get weaker. Rebecca reached for her hand. Sweetheart, how do you know that? Because they told me, Lily whispered. They're trying to hold on. The lights dimmed suddenly. The hum of the machines faltered. A technician cursed under his breath. Power fluctuation. Something's drawing from the backup grid. Then the main screen flickered. Lines of symbols appeared, shifting, glowing. They weren't random. They formed patterns like constellations. Daniel stared at them, realizing he'd seen the same symbols in Lily's sketches. Those are her drawings, he said quietly. The patterns began to move, forming the outline of a shape, a massive ring-like structure floating in darkness. It rotated slowly, casting long shadows. Patel whispered, It's a construct. Artificial. Blake stepped closer to the screen. Or a tomb. Lily stood, her eyes wide and glowing faintly blue again. That's where they sleep. Rebecca pulled her back, alarmed. Lily, what are you talking about? They built it before the war, Lily said, her voice distant, almost echoing. They knew everything was ending. They sent pieces of themselves into the stars, memories, dreams, voices, so they wouldn't be lost. The monitors flared again, the brightness forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When it faded, the main display showed a new image, a cluster of stars orbiting a dead sun. Around it floated 3 glowing entities, faint but distinct, one with wings, one serpentine, one solid as stone, Zareth, Orin, Kale. The room fell silent. The machines began recording rapidly as the images pulsed in rhythm with Lily's heartbeat. Blake whispered. She's syncing with them. Lily's voice deepened, layered with tones not her own. We remember. We remain. The lights flickered wildly. The data stream overflowed with unreadable patterns. Patel shouted for the power to be cut, but before anyone could move, Lily's voice changed again. They ask you to listen, she said, to carry what they were so they are not erased. Then the glow vanished. The room went dark. Lily collapsed, breathing shallow but steady. Daniel lifted her in his arms, terrified. Lily, please wake up. She stirred, opening her eyes weakly. They showed me where they are, she whispered. They want us to find them. Blake stared at the frozen image on the main screen. The dead sun, the orbiting shapes, the coordinates flashing beneath it. He whispered, if that's real, then humanity isn't alone. We never were. Outside, the desert wind rose, carrying with it a strange low hum, the same hum that had haunted the Parker family for weeks. And far above Earth, deep in the silent expanse, something ancient stirred for the first time in millennia. The night after the discovery in Nevada, Lily began to dream again. Her body rested, but her mind drifted across the stars. She saw oceans that glowed with light, cities built on crystal plains, and beings made of energy and thought. They were calling to her not in words but in feelings, colors, and memories. Their sorrow pressed against her heart, but beneath it was something else. Hope. Back at the desert observatory, Dr. Blake stared at the frozen coordinates on the main monitor. The signal's still active, he murmured. But it's changed frequency. It's no longer random. Daniel leaned closer. What do you mean? It's rhythmic, Blake said, like a pulse. Rebecca stood near Lily's bedside, her hand trembling as she brushed her daughter's hair. The monitors around the room flickered in sync with Lily's heartbeat. Every time her heart thumped, the data spiked. The rhythm wasn't human. It was harmonized. 3 frequencies layered perfectly together. Zareth, Orin, Kyle. They're using her, Daniel said softly. Communicating through her? Rebecca shook her head. No, she's choosing to help them. Blake looked between them. If that's true, she might be acting as a conduit, translating signals from another dimension or form of consciousness. It's possible these entities exist as pure energy now, preserved as quantum imprints. Daniel frowned. You're saying she's talking to ghosts of alien civilizations? Not ghosts, Blake said. Echoes. Suddenly the lights dimmed again. Outside, the desert wind picked up, howling like something alive. The stars seemed to shimmer brighter through the dome's glass ceiling. Then the power cut completely. Only the emergency light stayed on, washing the room in red. Lily sat up slowly, eyes glowing faint blue. Her voice was layered, hers and something ancient beneath it. They remember, she whispered. They've waited for so long. Rebecca stepped back, heart pounding. Lily, who's waiting? They are, Lily said. They've been dreaming inside the light. The stars hold them, but the stars are dying. Blake's equipment began recording without prompt. The readings were off the charts. Her body temperature's stable, but the energy output... He shook his head. She's generating radiation patterns similar to the signals themselves. She's sinking completely. Lily turned her gaze toward the ceiling, eyes distant. They want to show you, she said softly. The floor vibrated gently. Every monitor blinked on, displaying the same image, a vast galaxy swirling with golden light. The view zoomed in, revealing broken planets, shattered moons, and cities turned to ash. Giant machines drifted among the ruins, collecting fragments of memory. A voice, clear and deep, resonated through the speakers. We were the first to dream. We reached too far. The voice shifted, becoming thousands of tones at once. We burned our worlds in the name of creation. We wanted to live forever. But forever is a curse without purpose. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. They destroyed themselves, she whispered. Daniel could barely breathe. And now they want us to know. Blake's voice was shaky. They're warning us. Their story? It's a message. The image shifted again, showing enormous crystalline beings standing in front of a collapsing star. Around them, smaller forms fled toward the void, carrying orbs of light. Their memories. One by one, the orbs vanished into the stars. Lily's voice joined the echoes. They scattered themselves across time. Fragments of who they were. Some became light. Some became sound. Some became dreams. Daniel realized what she meant. They'd been reaching out for eons, trying to be remembered. The screens began to flicker faster. The sound built into a low hum that made the floor tremble. Blake shouted, "She's overloading. Disconnect her from the monitors." Rebecca moved forward, but Lily raised her hand. The hum stopped instantly. The room went silent. Then one of the monitors displayed a new image. A small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth. Lily's voice softened. They chose us, Daniel blinked. Chose us for what? To carry their memory, Lily said. To finish what they couldn't. The glow around her brightened until the whole dome filled with golden light. The air vibrated with energy, and for a fleeting second Daniel felt something in his chest. A warmth that wasn't his own. It was love, vast and infinite. The light expanded outward, washing over the desert. The instruments shut down completely, unable to handle the surge. For miles, people in nearby towns woke from their sleep, swearing they saw the sky shimmer with gold. When the light faded, Lily slumped back onto the bed, exhausted. The monitors were dead. Only the sound of her breathing filled the room. Rebecca touched her cheek. Sweetheart? Lily's eyes fluttered open. They're free now, she whispered. They don't need to wait anymore. Blake sat heavily in a chair, stunned. She did it. She helped them cross whatever barrier was left. Daniel nodded slowly, voice breaking. She gave them peace. Outside, dawn crept over the desert, painting the horizon in pink and gold. The air felt different, lighter somehow. Blake looked up through the dome, and for a moment, he thought he saw three faint shapes soaring above the clouds. One winged. One flowing like light, one solid and unmoving, Zareth, Orin, Kale. They shimmered, then vanished into the morning sky. Lily smiled faintly in her sleep, whispering one last phrase. We remembered them. And as the sun rose over the silent sands, humanity unknowingly became the keeper of 1,000 lost worlds.